Sabres won in a very strange way, but a win's a win over the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll recap it. Also, a little check-in today on the former Sabres, the players that were on the team last year that moved on to new destinations. Jeff Skinner, Casey Mittelstadt, Victor Olofsson, and many others. How's it going for them this year? We'll get to that as well here on today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome in to today's edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast. And for making us your first listen every day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. That includes our YouTube channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is presented by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Sneaky Joe DiBiase coming to you on an off day for the Buffalo Sabres in between games tomorrow against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Last night, the Sabres get the win over the Carolina Hurricanes 4-2 in very strange fashion. We'll talk about what we saw in the game, a big night for Ryan McLeod, who, since I pointed out, I don't even want to say I blasted him. Maybe you thought I did. Since I pointed out that he had gone 23 games without a goal, he has now scored 4 in 3 games and getting his first career hat trick last night, including a really great goal to open up the game on just a wrist shot coming down the seam with a ton of speed, as he is one of the faster players in the NHL, and he used it on that play. McLeod up to 10 goals now on the season, which is a pretty nice number. It's weird that he scored a bunch at the beginning of the year, and then there was the 23 games in the middle where he scored 0, and now he's heated up in the last couple of games, but whatever. 10 goals for him is 10 goals. He has not been the biggest problem for the Buffalo Sabres this season. So a lot to get to when it comes to that game and the weird record that the Sabres broke in the third period, or set, I should say, in the third period. And then I want to get to a little bit today on some of the guys that have moved on to new destinations this offseason and how it's going for them, because this year has not been quite the same as previous seasons of blank former Sabre moves on to a new team and look how well it's going. That's happened with a lot of guys, of course, in the past, especially the guys that had been at the top of the lineup, like Ryan O'Reilly and Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart. I do want to get to those two a little bit today, because their seasons, not too much time on them, but their seasons have been, like, they're in consideration for awards this year. And Reinhart especially. Reinhart is showing that maybe last year wasn't a fluke for him. But I want to get more so to the guys that were on the team last year, like your Casey Mittelstadts, Jeff Skinners, Victor Olofssons, Matt Savoy, a little bit too. And then one other guy that, little trivia question for you at the beginning of the show that you can answer maybe before you hear about him later on. I have not named yet the former Sabre that amongst last year's team has the most goals on a different team this year. I haven't named him yet. Maybe you know who it is. He's played against the Sabres recently. That's your hint. But let's get to what we saw last night, because it was going great. The Sabres were playing, I thought, pretty well, and for the caliber of opponent, I thought that's about as good as you can do against the Carolina Hurricanes. They're a team that love to dominate possession, dominate control of the puck, get a lot of chances, and win through the volume in which that they have on that front. And through 2 periods, like, the Sabres were not getting rolled. They were hanging in with the Carolina Hurricanes. Some of the numbers at 5-on-5 through the first 2 periods of action, shot attempts through 2 periods were 44-36 in favor of the Hurricanes. So, like, okay, they're winning that battle, but it's not a blowout. If you look at shots through 2 periods, it was 21-16 in favor of Carolina. Same thing, like, not a disaster. Scoring chances, the Sabres were getting quality, and especially in period 1. The Sabres had 10 scoring chances in the first period, 8 in the second period, so 18 for the Sabres through 2 periods of play, and only 12 for Carolina. So the quality was in favor of the Sabres, which is why when you looked at expected goals for through the expected score at 5-on-5 at least through 2 periods, it was 1.55 for the Buffalo Sabres and 1.15 for Carolina. They were getting the better chances. They were keeping Carolina to the perimeter. If you look at the heat map, in fact, I'll put it up on our YouTube channel where you can watch the show. The heat map in this game for Carolina was primarily on the edge, especially in periods 1 and 2. The Sabres were keeping them along the wall. I thought that their top 2 pairs, Dahlin and Byram, I thought were very good defensively in this game. I thought Power had a nice game. Power had a little bit of a physical game, which is kind of rare for him. Like, he stood a guy up coming into the zone once. He won another board battle early on. You see this little blue mark from the Hurricanes. A lot of that is in the third period when they were getting chances in and around the net. They got their couple of goals. So Carolina did get there. They did get there. But it took the third period really to do it. So Sabres were playing well. If you look at how they scored their goals through the first couple periods of play, as I mentioned, that first goal by Ryan McLeod is exactly how you want him to contribute when he's going to contribute. He is weaponizing his speed. He is one of the faster skaters in the league, and he does not have a great shot in general. But listen, if you're going to be skating twice the speed of, a guy with a great shot, sometimes that can have a similar impact because the puck movement is different, and where the puck is going to be when you begin the shooting process versus when it comes after is different than if you're just standing still. So you could be dangerous as a scorer even without a great shot if you are going to be moving really fast. Also, Dylan Cozens, the 2-0 goal in this game, is a great goal from Cozens, and it's the type of goal that I want to see from him more and more, which is just walking down the slot, and he's not yet at the face-off dots yet, or at the face-off circles even, so it's a wrist shot from distance, but he's down the middle, and it's just mano-a-mano. It is Dylan Cozens and the goaltender, and in this case especially, when the goaltender is Dustin Tokarski, he's got to score that goal. But he did, and it was a great shot. Like, I think most goalies in the league are not stopping Cozens on that goal. So nice to see Cozens get his 10th of the year. And then McLeod, kind of a right place at the right time goal at the end of the second period, where they get the 3-0 goal late, only seconds to go. And that was his 9th of the year at the time. And by the way, but before I get to Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was phenomenal through 2 periods. He was unbelievable through the first 2 periods of play. Even though they didn't have as many scoring chances as the Sabres did, he turned away a lot of quality chances. All the ones that he did, of course, he did turn away. Tokarski did not. That was the difference through 2 periods of play. So Luukkonen, I thought, was really sharp. And then the third period hit. And the Sabres, who had a 3-0 lead, completely sat on their heels. And not my favorite strategy. It's never one of my favorite strategies. I think hockey teams far too often get trapped in this mindset of, we have the lead, we have to play in our own end, we can't take any chances, we got to punt the puck back to them in neutral ice and just hang on. And that hanging on mentality almost got the Sabres beat. And it's the type of strategy that has gotten them beat in recent weeks. This game, they got away with it because they had just the right amount of goals. If they don't have that third goal, then I think they would have completely and utterly collapsed. They give up a pretty early goal, right? They make it 3-1 with more than 16 minutes to play. Carolina does, on the goal by Jacob Slavin. And then everyone probably had the same reaction. I know I did, which was, here we go. 3-1 with 16 minutes to play. You had to think they were going to blow it in that moment if you've watched this team enough. If not, credit to you. You are as optimistic a fan as you could be. And then they do a pretty good job. Like, they did limit Carolina. They did keep them to the wall. Couple of good chances, but for the most part, they were doing okay. And then the bombardment really began, I would say, at about the 13 minute, or about the 10-minute mark, maybe, of the third period. And they finally got that second goal from Martin Necas, his 16th of the year, at the 16:50 mark. And then you really maybe thought that this was going to be it. And they had been playing so poorly before that between the two goals where Lucan was bailing them out, they had, in the third period, they had 6 shots only, but they had 31 shot attempts, 6 high danger scoring chances. So really unless maybe one of those would have been something that missed the net, a high danger chance, but they had the same amount of high danger scoring chances in that third period as they did shots, 15 scoring chances in all to 2 for the Sabres. So, I mean, you've never seen, it's hard to see a team get outplayed the way they did in the third period, but it didn't even look like they were trying. And then 3-2, there's not that much time left, but still a few minutes, and Lindy Ruff calls timeout. Now, that has not worked for them in the past. They called a timeout against Colorado when they were in the midst of blowing their 4-goal lead at the beginning of the 13-game losing streak, and you could say the timeout either backfired or it just didn't matter because they gave up a goal immediately after the timeout ended and they lost that game. This game, they called the timeout, Lindy Ruff calming them down, and they played great. They did not allow really another great chance, I would say, from the Hurricanes after that timeout with about 3 minutes to play. And to that point, the Sabres still, though, had 0 shots on goal. I mean, I would hazard to guess the Sabres spent 90 seconds with the puck in the Carolina end that entire period. And Ryan McLeod, or I should say, start with Tage Thompson, fires the puck from his own end. Looks like it's going to hit the empty net. It hits the post, comes right back out. McLeod walking in, which would have been an easy empty net goal. And also their first shot of the period, but flying back is Brent Burns trying to keep the game alive. He slashes McLeod's stick, breaks it in half. Referee awards the goal. No shot on goal, but they do get the goal. So therefore, the Sabres set an NHL record. They are the only team in NHL history, and keep in mind, the data on this only goes back to, I think, 1966. So it's possible this happened in the 50s, the 40s or something. But for record keeping, in NHL history, the Sabres are the first team to ever score a goal in a full 20-minute period where they did not record a shot. It's kind of incredible. I don't know if it's an impressive record or if it's an embarrassing record. I don't know which it is, because it's kind of cool and it shows that they won the game and that they were up, so they got the empty netter, but it also highlights that you went a whole period without getting a shot, you know? So I don't really know what to do with the record. It's strange. It's unique. It's not something you want to replicate. It's not something that I think you can easily replicate. I think most times you have 0 shots on goal in a period like that, you're going to get smoked. But in this situation, they were able to hang on for dear life and get the win. So would I call it an impressive game? I don't know. I would say it was an impressive 2 periods, and then just they were wrong to play that way in the third period. And whether that's from the players and they get sucked into this mentality of we got to hang on for dear life, whether it's them doing that or if it's a conscious decision by Lindy Ruff and Seth Appert to play that style, however you arrive at let's play back on our heels and park the bus, that is to me the problem. But 2 pretty good periods before that I think the Sabres do deserve some credit for, and I don't want to completely wipe away, given that it was also against a great team in the Hurricanes. So you get the win, and there was only one other game on the night last night. So if you look at it right now, the Sabres are 9 points back of a playoff spot. So good news there. 9 points back of a playoff spot, and that is currently contained or owned by the Columbus Blue Jackets. So same amount of games played, and they have every team to climb over still. They are only 2 points back of the Islanders, though, for second last in the East. 6-3-1 in the last 10. So, it's starting to look a little bit better, but 6-3-1 is not going to get you any ground made up. You're going to have to be 9-1 in one of these 10-game stretches coming up. When we come back, let's check in on what some of the former Sabres are doing, especially the guys that were on the team last year. Surprising name has the most goals of that group. Well, you know who that is and how it's going with Olofsson, Skinner, Mittelstadt, Matt Savoy down in the AHL. All that ahead here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored job credits. Get sponsored jobs. Put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidate faster. Been in a spot where you need the right hire, like yesterday, pressure's on. Every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. The Sabres get the win over the Carolina Hurricanes. 39 points in 44 games for the Buffalo Sabres. You know, often, and I'll be the first one to do it, the Sabres get made fun of for in the past for their former players getting run out of town or actively trying to leave and then going elsewhere and being amazing and winning, especially the guys who have won Stanley Cups like Ryan O'Reilly, Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart. I don't need to go through the list with you. So this year, again, would have been the first one to do it. The joke of Jeff Skinner signs with the Edmonton Oilers. Oh, who's going to win the cup this year? Who's going to win the Conn Smythe? It's going to be Skinner and Edmonton scoring 50 goals on McDavid's wing. Is it going to be Mittelstadt behind McKinnon getting a point per game in the playoffs? Who's it going to be? And that has not really come to fruition this year. The Sabres are not. They're embarrassing themselves as they tend to do, and that matters more. But the twist of the knife in recent seasons where they've fallen short has been like the knife's already in your back. And the twist is a guy elsewhere that used to be on your team playing great and winning. You're not really getting that this year. The twist of the knife isn't there. The knife still exists, but there's no twist this season, I would say, because those couple of big name individuals that are no longer here are not really thriving in their current situations. And one of which is actually doing the complete opposite, maybe on the verge of even getting waived. And that's where we'll start with how it's going for some of our former Sabres, some of which we still like well enough. Like, actually, this list is a group of guys I think that are a lot more well-liked here in Buffalo than the more recent guys from before that, Eichels, Reinhart, whoever. Although Reinhart was well-liked. It was more about Eichel and maybe O'Reilly. Let's start with Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner, one of my favorite Sabres, maybe of all time. Like, got a raw deal, was a very good player. Was looking through some numbers yesterday about the quarter century team that came out for the Sabres and how Skinner is actually near the top of the list of Sabre goal scorers in the last 25 years. Even with those two horrible Kruger years in the middle, he still managed to be, I think it's top 5 in goals scored for this hockey team in the last 25 years. Or it was at least top 10 if it wasn't top 5. So he moves on to Edmonton. And the story about Skinner moving on, there was a couple different elements of it. And for me, there's no regret. There never was about the Sabres moving on from Jeff Skinner. I mean, I probably would have said this in the summer that if you're not going to do anything with the $7 million you're saving by buying out Jeff Skinner, well, then you might as well keep him. Because last season, he scored 24 goals. And maybe this year's proving he would not have done that again. But at the time, I was thinking 24 goals. I know that's a down year for him, but that's not so easily replaced. And right now that's being proven true. Like JJ Peterka, who was supposed to take his spot in that top line, he's not on pace for 24 goals. He's on pace for less than that. So Skinner was giving you something, even if it wasn't as good as what you were hoping for. This year in Edmonton, though, it's not working at all. And it might be on the verge of ending. Jeff Skinner, through 40 games played this season with the Oilers, has 7 goals and 8 assists, and he is barely being used. I mean, he is 3 of his last 4 games. He's been played less than 10 minutes, despite the fact, by the way, that he actually put up some points in the last 4 games, 3 points in 4 games. But the overall play is not there. And listen, I'll defend him in the same way I've always defended him. And I'm not sure it's really even different in Edmonton. There's a point to be made with Skinner always. You gotta have a coach that understands what he is, or you don't have him on your team, which is fine. Then don't have him on your team. And I don't think there's anything wrong with not wanting a guy like Jeff Skinner on your team because he is so specialized. He is so one-dimensional. And you have to have the perfect environment for him, or he's going to give you nothing. But if you do have the perfect environment for Jeff Skinner, he'll give you some production. And that's exactly what happened 2 years ago. It's what happened many years in Carolina. It's what happened in his first year with the Sabres. You got to have him play with a top playmaking center in the top six. And you have to leave him there, and you have to live with his streakiness and just let it be. And if you do that, he's going to score 20 or more goals for you. And sometimes, some seasons, he'll score 35 or more goals for you. That's Jeff Skinner from his earliest days in Carolina into even maybe right now. I don't know if that's still him because Edmonton, and again, like I don't want to blame Edmonton. They're a great team that doesn't have a spot for him in their top six. Like, okay, then it is what it is. But you don't know what he can give you unless he's in that environment, because every time he hasn't been, he does nothing. He needs a top center. He's an opportunistic goal scorer, like to live around those quality scoring areas and work off of that centerman. And when you don't give him that centerman, he can't do what he's good at. So that's why it hasn't worked this year, is Edmonton has not played him with Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. And if you were never going to play him with one of those two, then you should have never signed him, because it was never going to work then. And that's what's happened with Jeff Skinner. And now he's falling out of favor, and he desperately wants to play in the playoffs. He has played more than 1,000 games now in the NHL and never appeared in a playoff game. Historic. And he wants to this year with Edmonton. Oilers are going to make the playoffs. I've seen give interviews and made comments like he will take on a different role in the name of being on a winning team. He's basically saying in recent days, like, I will be a bottom six winger and do my job and be physical and be the best defensive player I can in the name of I want to be in the playoffs. Like, I'll work to be on a winning team, but I just don't think he's capable. That's the problem. Like, he can want to be that player all he is. He's not that player. He's not big enough to be that player. He's not fast enough defensively to be that good of a player in his own end. I would be stunned if he was able to transform his game like that. I don't think it's been in the cards. So if I'm a Jeff Skinner fan like I am, and I would love to see him get a chance to play in the playoffs, what I'm scared of right now is that he's going to get waived, and he's not going to get that chance, because that's, I believe, where we're headed. He's been healthy scratched recently for Edmonton. So all in all, there's some defense of him. You got to give him a shot with McDavid or Draisaitl, or you're never going to get anything. But on the other hand, I do understand why a team wouldn't just want to throw him up there. So that's what's going on with Skinner. The other big name is Casey Mittelstadt. Mittelstadt is having a down year, and that's kind of out of nowhere, because he had 2 really good years in a row for the Buffalo Sabres. And then he gets traded to Colorado, and he had a good end of the year last year. I think he was a point-per-game player in the playoffs, so he played pretty well there in the postseason in his first opportunity there. And then this year starts, and again, like, it kind of started well through the first 10 games, then everything since then has been bad. It's been bad. And Mittelstadt has forced Avalanche fans and writers to be wondering about, like, maybe we should trade for Steven Stamkos to be our number 2 center. And what's happening with Mittelstadt is his defensive game has cratered. He's actually still generating chances, and his line has the puck more often than not. He's in the 73rd percentile for EVO. At Evolving Hockey, goals above replacement, 73rd percentile for forwards, but he's in the 16th percentile defensively. I've noticed that whenever I've seen the little bits of Colorado games, like, he's getting run over in his own end. So it's not working out for Mittelstadt, because also the points are not coming. He's got on the season 8 goals, 18 assists. That's 26 points in 45 games. That's only a 47-point pace on the year. Colorado wants better than that for their second line center. So it's not really working out with Casey Mittelstadt. I'll let you know what's going on with Matt Savoy. Victor Olofsson is having a good year so far for Vegas. And then what's going on with some of the other older former Sabres when we come back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Gametime. Got the game of the year for playoff football coming up this Sunday. And all those tickets that are available, it's going to be cold, but you might get some good deals because of that, are available on Gametime. And it's not just football or hockey, of course, here locally. It is music, it's theater, it's comedy. I went to a concert in the summer, and all the options that you get on Gametime, the deals you get on Gametime make it so much easier. Great concert too. Now Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite live events with their new feature called Gametime Picks. So this feature filters out all the fluff, show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, was looking actually to see like, hey, how expensive are tickets to this football game versus last week, to kind of see like what the hype is like for that. And you can check that out on Gametime. You find amazing deals from your seat, even right up to the start of the event. Sometimes even after the event begins, you get those last minute tickets and you get some really good deals on them. Maybe, tailgate on Sunday and without a ticket and see if they drop before the game begins, and then you get a good deal. Gametime, take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. The Sabres are off. They got a win last night. Let's take a minute, see what's going on with some of their former players. Next up, let's talk about Victor Olofsson, what he is doing with the Vegas Golden Knights. He is having a very good year. He was injured for part of the season, so he hasn't played as many games as others. But in 23 games played, Victor Olofsson is sitting on 9 goals and 7 assists. That's 16 points in 23 games. That's actually very good for Victor Olofsson. And a lot of that has to do with who he's been playing with. He has had the fortune of getting to play a good amount this season with Jack Eichel. He's actually not with Eichel right now, but he is still in the top 6 on the second line, being centered by Tomas Hertl. But really the thing with Vegas is, like, Olofsson's never going to be a good fourth liner. And they seem to know that better than the Oilers do with Skinner. So they know, actually, that's a good point. Like, the Oilers should just do what Vegas is doing. Play Skinner for 10 games with McDavid or Draisaitl or both. See how it goes. And if he doesn't score, then you waive him. Vegas knows what Victor Olofsson is. They know he can't play in the bottom 6. So they threw him up with the top 2 centers and see if it works. And it has. And he was playing a lot with Eichel. Now he's playing with Tomas Hertl and a young player on the right wing. So it's working for Olofsson. He is on an 82-game pace of 32 goals and 25 assists. So I don't think he was ever really a disliked player. I mean, last year was very frustrating because he was giving them nothing offensively, but I'll go reach back to the style the Sabres were trying to play. I just don't think it worked for Olofsson, and he played a lot in the bottom 6, and you're not going to get production out of him. This year, the Golden Knights are playing him 16 minutes a night. 16 minutes a night. He's getting power play time. In fact, that is where a lot of his production has come. In fact, most of it. 6 of his 9 goals are on the power play. 3 goals and 10 assists, though, at 5-on-5. So he still does have 10 points at 5-on-5, but 6 of his goals are on the power play. So they know what they have, and they're utilizing him very smartly and very well. So good for Olofsson. That's going well for him. Matt Savoy down in the Oilers AHL affiliate, which I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. But Savoy, AHL All-Star, 27 points in 33 games played. He's not doing so well like at the NHL level that anyone's regretting that right now, because Ryan McLeod's actually been a good find, a fine find, I would say. But Savoy has done his thing in the AHL level the way he should. And then finally, this was our trivia question from earlier. The guy that was on the Sabres last year and isn't anymore, that has the most goals this season, was on the ice last night. Eric Robinson of the Carolina Hurricanes. Who? What? Did you forget about Eric Robinson? Fourth line Eric Robinson that wore number 50 for the Buffalo Sabres. Eric Robinson, who in 40 games for the Buffalo Sabres, after being traded for last year, had 2 goals. Yeah, that Eric Robinson on the Carolina Hurricanes this year, still only playing 12 minutes a night. Not like he's being utilized in the top 6, nor should he ever. In 45 games, Eric Robinson has 10 goals. What? 10 goals and 11 assists, 21 points. That is an 82-game pace of 18 goals and 38 points. Kind of wild that Robinson has more goals than Olofsson, because Olofsson hasn't played as many games, but more than Olofsson, more than Skinner, more than Mittelstadt. Wild. He has as many goals this year as Dylan Cousins and JJ Peterka. That's a sad reality, isn't it? Robinson has many goals as Dylan Cousins and JJ Peterka. Yikes. So, yeah, Carolina. I mean, that's a team where you get the most out of guys, I guess. I just didn't think there was a most out of Eric Robinson. And then finally, quick check-in on the other two that, I know I don't like to belabor about these two. I know fans don't want to really hear about how well they're doing. It's why on a, roughly usually 30-minute podcast that we do 4 or 5 times a week throughout the entire regular season. So what's that? How long is the regular season? We're talking, 6 months, 4 weeks a year, 24 weeks, times 4 or 5. We're doing 200 shows a year. We're going to spend 2 minutes on Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart. If you don't want to, then you can turn us off and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Eichel and Reinhart are both in contention for major awards this year. If you thought it couldn't get worse after they both won the Stanley Cup, it's not a great chance. It's more of an outside chance. But there's an outside chance that they win the Hart and the Rocket in the same year. It's not crazy. I mean, Eichel's got some work to do. I checked this morning, is 5th in the Hart Trophy odds, and all those guys are plus money, so it's kind of a wide open race right now, but he is 5th of 5. 54 points in 42 games, on a 100-plus point pace, so Eichel's doing his thing. He's been one of the best centers in the league all year. And then Reinhart to me is the more interesting one, because Reinhart, I would have thought, and most would have thought, that last year was an anomaly. That, okay, he's a better player in Florida than he ever was in Buffalo, but he's not a 57-goal scorer on a regular basis, right? Like, that would have been, he led the league in power play goals last year with 27. He's not going to be that going forward. That's a one-off. He had one of those, and he'll have some 30-goal and some 40-goal seasons, but he's not going to be 50-goal guy. He's 50-goal guy. Reinhart, I wonder if this lasts for a long time. How many years? He is 2nd in the NHL in goals. Only Leon Draisaitl has more. And 27 on the year in 45 games gives him a 50-goal pace. Like, just like a decimal below that. So he's basically on a 50-goal pace for the 2nd consecutive season. And that is wild to me, right? Like, I loved Reinhart as a player when he was here, and in those first 2 years in Florida, I've always thought he's a very good player, a great player. But if you told me he was going to be a consistent 50-goal scorer, I would have told you you're freaking nuts. Of course he isn't going to be that, because his release was always really good, but I never thought it was elite. And his speed was always really good, but wasn't elite. He plays wing, not center. Like, he was really good at everything, but I never thought he was elite in anything. But it's really the placement of his shots. He is so accurate. He doesn't shoot the hardest puck, but his shot is so freaking accurate that it really, I think, is what allows him to be so good. And his feel on the power play, of course. I mean, this year, 9 power play goals. So the 5-on-5 percentage is actually maybe gone up a little bit. Maybe it's around the same. But either way, Reinhart is maybe on his way to another 50-goal season. He is a little ways behind Leon Draisaitl for the NHL goal lead. Draisaitl has 31. Reinhart is 27. So he's 4 goals back of Draisaitl. So again, like, for those two to win those major awards, you need Eichel to kind of beat out McKinnon and McDavid and Kucherov here. And then you need Draisaitl to fall a little bit and Reinhart to catch him. So that's what's going on with all these former Sabres. One last tidbit. Rasmus Ristolainen, I know there's trade rumors about him at the deadline. So his days in Philadelphia might be numbered. And that's it. Unless I'm missing anybody, You can talk about it in the text club if you want. If you want to hit us up in our text club, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres to sign up. Get game updates, injury updates, all the breaking news. If the Sabres were ever to make a trade, we would bring that to you first on our Locked On Sabres text club. So that will do it for us, though, today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Love to do the show today and, take a little bit of a 30-minute break from my tension right now about the Bills and the Ravens on Sunday. So enjoyed the distraction. Now I'm going to go binge watch some more Bills content and get that pit back in my stomach. So I'll talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. And if you want some Bills coverage, make sure check out Joe Marino with Locked On Bills. If you're looking for more hockey, Steal and Flip got you covered with Locked On Fantasy Hockey. We'll talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.